Hello everybody, it's Sarah and today I'm going to show you my first video for the first video challenge of Spooktober. If you don't know what Spooktober is yet, I will leave all of the hosts as well as the Twitter page and Instagram page in the description box down below, so you can go and check that out. And the first video challenge was created by Vanessa from Paper Fairy, and it's to basically take you to a place that's close to me that is kind of spooky or has a spooky history. And I am going to take you to two places actually, and I'm going to tell you about a few more because I live in Vienna and we are just like full of spooky places. But the two that I'm going to take you to is the Central Cemetery, which I just love. It's one of my favorite places in Vienna. And the second one is Blutgasse, which kind of has a very spooky and gruesome history, and I am going to tell you about that when we're there. Since I am not really a scary person, I am more a person that is scared, and I'm not very good at being spooky. I'm just going to tell you about those things in a kind of history lesson kind of way, because that's what I do best, after all. First, however, before I take you there, I want to tell you just a little bit about the history that Vienna has with death. Vienna is the city of death. And I don't mean that is because so many people have died here, which of course is also true, as with all old cities, but it's because the Viennese have a very special kind of relationship with death. We don't really fear him. We have the kind of relationship with death that's like in the Harry Potter story of the three brothers, where the third brother just sees death as an old friend. And one reason for that is because we just love life so much that we don't really care about death, but we just see it as the other side of the coin, and to live you have to die, if that makes any sense. The second reason is because we have a very dark humor and we love everything that's macabre. A German saying goes that death was probably Viennese, and also Sigmund Freud probably wouldn't have said all the things he said if he hadn't been from Vienna. After all, he was the one who said the aim of life is to die. And so yeah, we have a lot of spooky places in Vienna. The first ever funeral museum was created in Vienna, and one of the most important things in a person's life is his funeral. I think like in the rest of Europe, about 60% of people get cremated. In Vienna, only 25% get cremated. Around 75% still choose a burial. And actually last semester I took a lecture for anthropology, which was kind of about museums, but our lecturer was the curator of the funeral museum, so we learned a lot about like cemeteries as open-air museums, cemeteries where you take walks, and also just what the funeral means for the Viennese. We had something that's called schöne Leich, which translates to beautiful corpse. And what this means is that a funeral in Vienna has to be very big and very elaborate. And during the monarchy, people used to save up for their funeral, because how elaborate your funeral is showed how rich you are. So even the poor people tried to have a big funeral, which kind of makes no sense anymore because you're dead anyway. But also we had this really long walks, like funeral marches kind of, where you would go from your church with everyone who was invited to the funeral, which a lot of the time are like really many people, and the coffin would be in a black carriage which was drawn by black horses, mostly 4 black horses, and then like the whole procession would go through all of Vienna to the cemetery, and that was like a big social event. And one of the most important things about a funeral is what you eat, and so part of a funeral is always like a big feast. So as you can kind of see, death is very important to us and it's very near and dear to us. And then you have creepy places and creepy cemeteries. For example, near the Danube, there was a place where all the corpses that fell into the Danube were kind of like rather resurfaced on land, and most of those people were unidentifiable because they were in water and stuff. And so there's a cemetery of the nameless, and we don't know anybody who is buried there. We don't know who they are. And of course most of the people who were buried there were also suicides, so they weren't even allowed a decent burial. So this kind of like non-hallowed something ground where everybody who you don't know who they are is buried, which is a kind of weird place. I've never been there, but I really want to go. And another thing, because of course this is Spooktober, but for death in Vienna it's actually not October, it's not the 31st of October, that's the important day, but the 1st of November. And the 1st of November is the Christian holiday of All Souls. And a lot of people, together with their families, on that day go to the cemeteries to remember their dead friends, ancestors, whoever is dead and there. And actually it's also really important for me. I'm personally not Christian, but it's one of my favorite days of the year, because every year together with my mom we visit my grandmother and we go to visit all the graves of our family. And since a lot of my family is dead and I never knew them, it's like the kind of day where they tell stories about them, and I kind of feel like I get to know them a little bit more each year, and I just love that day. Now I'm going to take you to first to the Central Cemetery and then to Blutgasse, and I hope you enjoy. At the Central Cemetery I will tell you a little bit more about the history of that cemetery, and I hope that I can film there because it's raining pretty badly outside. But anyways, let's get going. I just arrived at the Central Cemetery in Vienna, and that's like the main street going in. And by the way, it's just crazy cold and raining and windy, and I hope it'll be alright. There are just like so many beautiful graves here. I love it. So just some general information while I walk around. The Central Cemetery of Vienna was founded at the end of the 19th century. I think 1873, probably, but I could be wrong. And it's 2.5 square kilometers big. There are a couple of 100,000 graves, and more than 3 million people are buried here, which is more than the entire population of Vienna, which just has a bit more than 2 million people. So, yeah. Also, I read that here on the Central Cemetery, about half of the people that have ever lived in Vienna are like lying dead right now. Which is also really crazy when you think about it, because Vienna is about 2000 years old. Like, the foundation was laid by the Romans. As you can see, with graves and monuments like this, we are quite fond of displaying our death. I think it's a really nice cemetery. I think it's beautiful, and I don't know, maybe you can understand why I love taking walks here, even though I haven't been here too often yet. And I just, like, that's my favorite kind of grave, like with lots of green stuff. That doesn't look particularly well kept, I guess you could say. A little information: if you're around on Halloween and a demon hunts you and you think that a cemetery usually is sacred ground or hallowed ground, you won't have any luck here. This cemetery was built as to not be part of one particular religion. So you have the, of course, Roman Catholic part of the cemetery, because Austria is a mostly Roman Catholic country. Then you have the Protestant and the Orthodox churches or graves. Then you have a bit of a Mormon cemetery. There's a Buddhist part of the cemetery, and then the second biggest part of the cemetery is Jewish. And there's also, I think, some Muslim graves. I'm not really sure though. Oh, I love those graves. Look at them. Look at that grave. Isn't it beautiful? I just kind of feel really bad for bringing you here as a scary or spooky place, because I just don't think that it's spooky and scary. But then, fun fact about me, after old libraries, like really old, like old university libraries or monastery libraries, cemeteries are my favorite place or favorite kind of place to be. I just love them. I guess in that aspect I'm truly Viennese, and I have been here once before, like on the central cemetery of Vienna, and that was, I think, 3 years ago on the 2nd of November, so the Christian holiday of All Souls. And I was here together with my mom, and we just walked around the cemetery for 3 or 4 hours talking. And it was just the best of time, and truly I just wanted to be back here ever since then, and I'm just so ecstatic right now to be here. This here is probably the scariest place in the whole cemetery, although depending on how you define scary, it's probably more sad than scary, because this is the baby's graveyard, and I'm not sure if I can find some right now, but a lot of the times, especially on the 1st of November, so All Souls, people who come here just leave toys for the babies, so they can have a happy afterlife, I guess. And it's just really heartbreaking to think about all those babies just never being able to live, really, or to get a chance to live. And so, I don't know, I guess I just kind of wanted to show this part of the cemetery to you as well. So that was the central cemetery of Vienna, and now let's move on to another place which actually has a kind of very sinister history and some scary stuff that is told about it. And that is Blutgasse, which translates to Blood Alley. So as you can see, the name in itself already is quite dark, and it's right behind St. Stephen's Cathedral, and St. Stephen's Cathedral has its own sinister history, and I told one of the stories about St. Stephen's Cathedral in my first story time video, so if you're interested in that, I will leave it in the description box down below. But Blutgasse, or Blood Alley, it's a very small little alley behind St. Stephen's Cathedral, and the story goes that it got its name from a massacre. I'm not sure if it was the 13th or the 14th century, in this very alley So many Knights Templar were massacred, slaughtered, that the whole alley was just flooded with blood. And that is why it's now called Blutgasse, Blood Alley. Which I have to say is kind of creepy. The other connection with death this alley has is that actually for centuries everyone who was sentenced to death had to walk through this alley to get to their execution. And it is said that this alley is still haunted both by the ghosts of the people executed as well as the Knights Templar. And on the other hand, it's kind of funny because I researched a little bit like haunted places in Vienna, even though I could think of dozens off the top of my head when I heard what the challenge was. But just to see what else there was. And actually there are no hauntings known from the, what is it called? Central Cemetery. So who knows why. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed me showing you a bit of Vienna again, because that's something that I really enjoy doing. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. All the links to my social media will be in the description box down below, so you can also go and check those out. And I hope I'll see you soon. Bye!